The Chicago Bulls currently sit in a place where they have a 50% chance to keep their pick, as well as a 50% chance to make the playoffs, according to the odds. We're going to take a look at that, plus the next 9 games for the Chicago Bulls and why. That should tell us a lot about what the rest of the season could hold for the Chicago Bulls. We're going to look at also some of the power rankings right now from some of the major publications for the Chicago Bulls. Also, Derrick Rose doesn't want a statue, but would love to see his jersey retire. We're going to talk about all that, plus the mailbag right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Derrick Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. I want to start off with this. The Chicago Bulls have a stretch coming up over the next 9 games where 6 of those opponents are under 500. And the reason why I point that out is I think when you look at the Chicago Bulls and where they are right now, right? I said it before. The Bulls have right now a 50% chance to make the playoffs per the odds. They have a 50% chance to keep their pick. If they do keep the pick, if things were to end right now, the Chicago Bulls would end with the 9th overall pick before the lottery. And so the lottery, absolutely, they can be jumped. They can rise up the lottery, but that's where they would end right now. They also, according to Tankathon, have a 50% chance to make the playoffs. And so that sits in the Bulls in a place where we're used to being the 50-50 team, right? The mid team, the team that just doesn't clearly still have a direction, and that's all fine and dandy. But this next little stretch by the Chicago Bulls may pick the direction for them. And by that, I mean this, right? In those next games that are coming up for the Chicago Bulls and the fact that the Chicago Bulls have those 6 games against opponents under 500, if the Bulls cannot get a winning record over the next 9 games and most of their opponents are below 500, that should tell you a lot. In my opinion, that should tell you a lot about where this team sits. Yeah, we have some good opponents over that time as well. We got the New York Knicks coming up today. We got the San Antonio Spurs after that, the Indiana Pacers after that, right? And those are all going to be 3 really tough games for the Bulls because those are teams that, if they're fully healthy and they field their full team, there are going to be a little bit of matchup issues there for the Chicago Bulls. Now, outside of that, you also got games against Washington. You got a game against Sacramento, who has the same record as the Chicago Bulls. You got a game against the New Orleans Pelicans, a game against the Atlanta Hawks, a game against the Charlotte Hornets, right? And that puts us right around to mid-January. So the Bulls have until mid-January. And again, that still leaves them a nice amount of time to make a decision on what they're going to do with their roster, right? And I think all signs are pointing towards it seems like this team is going to keep this thing together. That just is what it is. We can talk about the merits of that, if that's good or bad or whatever else at that time. And then you also got to look at Taylor Norton-Tucker. His guarantee date, I think, is tomorrow. Fully guaranteed. Oh no, we got 10 days. To the 10th of January. So we got 6 more days until we get a decision on if his contract is going to become fully guaranteed. So that'll happen in the midst of this 9-game stretch as well, right? So I think that's really important to see how the Bulls fare over these games because that's going to dictate a lot for you. That is going to dictate a lot for you. And I think it's going to come down to seeing how this team really does stack up against teams that are around their level. And we know, listen, being bottom feeders and using that to get into the play-in, it doesn't necessarily feel the best. But we know that is definitely something that AK would absolutely do. So, between now, where we face New York, until the January 19th game where we face off against Portland, that's a nice wide range of, getting to face a lot of bottom feeders but after that, you go right into a tough stretch. After January 19th, right, I know everybody's been pushing this. The Bulls have the second easiest schedule in the league. After January 19th, from that point on, we have, I think, a top 12 most difficult schedule in the NBA because we come out of that and we face the Clippers, Golden State Warriors, the Philadelphia 76ers, the Denver Nuggets, the Boston Celtics, right? And then Toronto, Detroit, and Miami, going into February. So, we'll see what happens with Miami, especially over there. But that leads us to the trade deadline. So between now and the trade deadline, we have a mixed bag with a lot of kind of easy teams in that And then we go through a 5-game stretch of extremely difficult teams, right? Before we come back with another mixed bag, and then we go on our West Coast trip. So this is really important for the Bulls to kind of figure out where they are. And when you look at the power rankings for the Bulls, for example, NBA.com has the Chicago Bulls at number 21. ESPN has us at number 22. The Athletic has us at number 23. USA Today has us at number 21. So we're hovering around that 21 and 22 area overall. And, and I understand why a lot of outlets look at the Chicago Bulls that way, because, again, we are a listless team, right? For every solid win that we have, we turn around and lose to the Washington Wizards, or we go into overtime against the Charlotte Hornets, right? So it's really kind of difficult to see. And the Bulls do need to pick a lane. That's one thing throughout these power rankings, for those that check it out, that most people agree with. The Bulls have to pick a lane, and they've still hesitated to do so. And as long as they hesitate to do so, we're going to be still sitting in the same area where it's just like, okay, well, what are we doing, right? What are the Chicago Bulls doing? So, with the fact that the Bulls have this, that they sit right now in this mid area, because that's just where we are. It's the most Chicago Bulls thing, really, when you really think about it, right? The fact that our odds right now to make the playoffs are about as high as our odds to make it into the to keep our pick. It's just the most Chicago Bulls thing that you could really be in, right? Basketball Reference, like I said, 50-50 shot to land a top 10 pick or to make the playoffs. It just sucks, right? So this period of time will tell us a lot about the Chicago Bulls. But then again, will it? How many periods have we had where we're like, oh, this next stretch should show us something about the Bulls? And then when we get there, it's the same thing. It's the same mixed bag to where you're still looking at it and you're like, I don't know how to read this, right? Because this team is one of the most confusing and listless and directionless teams that I've ever seen. And it's been so consistent with this team. It's really freaking frustrating. But, we'll see where it all ends up shaking out. Let me know your guys' thoughts down below. I want to get into this list. So there's a writer, Austin McGee, who came out and he had a list of 7 Chicago Bulls who will be in a different uniform come 2026, right? And so I want to go over this list real quick. And again, this is not my list. I did not write this list. I just want to go over because I think it's interesting, some of the reasoning here. At number 7, he has Chris Duarte. No shit. Chris Duarte is not going to be returning to this team. He's not part of this team. He's not none of that. It doesn't matter. He's gone. Chris Duarte's done. Taylor Horton-Tucker. And I think this is interesting for a couple of different reasons, right? THT, I think that a lot of people looked at his early season performance and they got enamored by it. And I was even the one to talk about it. Like, THT was effective for the Bulls because he was basically allowed to operate as a high volume player, because he was out there when it was players like when players like Dalen Terry and Julian Phillips and those guys were out there. And those aren't the most aggressive guys on offense. And so he was basically allowed, like I said, to operate like a high usage player. He was having the ball in his hands. He was getting a lot of shots. He was putting up some numbers. But then it's all come crashing back down to who THT is. THT is a player that, simply put, is a player that needs a bunch of minutes and a bunch of shots to get you mediocre stats. And this is why I'm so confused by some people who look at THT and they're like, yeah, we got to play him more. And you look at P. Will, and those same people will be like, yeah, why is P. Will still on this team? P. Will is a more efficient player than Taylor Horton-Tucker. He's a more versatile player than Taylor Horton-Tucker. He's more consistent than Taylor Horton-Tucker, and that's saying a lot, right? And he can play more positions than Taylor Horton-Tucker. So it's like sometimes with Bulls fans, like I said, I think we get enamored by, like, when we see players give, like, it looks like they're giving effort, but if the results are still trash, but it's like he's out there hustling. But THT has been bad. He's been bad over the last couple of games, not shooting well, not being efficient there. He's been terrible defensively. He's put up 0-4, 0-6, 1-5, 2-6 games over the last handful of games. He did have 3-5 against Washington, but THT has just not been good. After initial first handful of games, THT just has not been good at all for the Chicago Bulls, right? Now, some of those games his minutes are inconsistent, but it is what it is there. But they have THT on this list. I agree with that one. Javon Carter, please, for the love of everything holy, please let Javon Carter not be on in the Bulls uniform by the end of this season, please. They have Torrey Craig. I think that's a pretty much a sort one there at number 4. Lonzo Ball at number 3. And I know this is one that a lot of Bulls fans go back and forth on, because Bulls fans look at it and say, hey, listen, Lonzo Ball's been playing solid for us. He's shooting the ball like shit, but he's been playing solid for us. He has a positive plus minus. We have a positive point differential when he's on the court. points per 100 possession. All these things are up, right? But I do think that the injury history does play a part. And no, it's not just the knee, right? And then on top of that, it just comes down to what is he willing to accept for contract. And I think that's something that we have to see. And while Lonzo has never been like a hugely athletic player, as long as that knee could hold up, he's gonna, like we've seen it. He can be have an impact on the floor without needing a whole bunch of minutes or something like that. So we'll see what the future holds. And then, of course, at number 2 and number 1, they have Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic. And here's the thing and it's key that they said by 2026, right? Because I do think that both these guys now have come around. I think that they both end the season in the Chicago Bulls uniform. Now watch, because I do that, they'll be traded here in the next couple of weeks. But I do believe that they are going to finish the season with the Chicago Bulls. But if the Bulls do finish, which they do have a chance to not make any moves on this roster and still keep their top 10 pick, the Bulls may look to then do something at the draft if they do keep their top 10 pick. So I do think there's a chance they can end the season with the Chicago Bulls, but not be on the Bulls roster at the beginning of next season. But again, we'll see where that gets to. Let me know what you guys think of this list down below. Do you agree with these players? What are some other players you think may not be in a Bulls uniform by the beginning of next season? Now, Derrick Rose came out. He was talking to Sham. Shout out to the 2 Chicago kids talking. And he said that he would love to see his number 1 jersey retired, but he doesn't really care for a statue, right? Saying that the number 1 jersey retirement is kind of more him, right? And that he would love that. That's more me if they do it. Now, I don't think that they're going to retire Derrick Rose's jersey. The Bulls have come out and basically said they're not retiring jerseys. But if anyone deserves to be the exception to that rule, it is Derrick Rose. That's just my personal opinion. And, and again, I think when you look at some of the statues also that have come out over the last few years, like, would you really want to trust people to make a statue of you? Like, no, because these statues have been horrendous lately. So I think that definitely plays a part into it as well. But let me know what you guys, I know this is going to be an eternal conversation. It is Derrick Rose Day, by the way, but let me know how you guys feel as far as should the Bulls retire Derrick Rose's number? Let me know that down below. But with that said, it is Saturday, so that means it is Mailbag Day. Let's get into these voicemails. This one's from TJ.
Yo, what's up, Hayes? It's TJ. I just seen your post on IG talking about the Bulls. There'll be a potential destination for Zion if the Phils were actually trying to, trade him and shit. Man, when I say I'm so fucking conflicted, bro, because on one end, I do not want another hurt-ass individual who's not finna be playing. I don't need another non-playing-ass basketball player on our team, bro. Like, Zoe was enough. Like, it's facts, too. Like, that was enough for me. So, but, my bad. But at the same time, it's like, sorry about that. But at the same time, it's like, it could be a win-win if you really think about it, because Zion is cold when he actually plays. When he actually played, that would immediately make us a playoff contender team in my eyes. I feel like he could fit in. And if you trade Zach and Vooch, you could run nah, that's not even going to work. Somebody could have to come off the bench. But that'd be good for depth. That's all I'm trying to say. And shoot, since he injured, I think he out for the rest of the season this year, right? If I'm not mistaken. That could be a win-win. We could keep our pick and potentially have a franchise-altering player in one trade. But I don't know, hey, let me know what you think, man. Yeah, let me hear your thoughts on it.
TJ, I say it at the beginning of every episode. If the handle is not Bull Central Pod, it's not me. That IG page is not me. That's a counterfeit Chicago Bull Central. That's not me. But as far as Zion, here's the thing that I feel on Zion. I would not trade for Zion under any circumstances. Especially when the Pelicans are talking about that they could waive him outright. So this is what I'll say when it comes to that. I think that if Zion Williamson is waived, I wouldn't mind the Bulls taking a look at him then, right? Because you're not going to give him a huge contract at that point. Everybody knows the injury concerns. Zion in the open market isn't going to get a lot. Now, there is maybe a team out there that's willing to give him $20 million to take a look again, whatever, and the Bulls may be priced out at that point. I would not mind the Bulls taking a shot at Zion if he gets waived. As far as trading assets for him, no. I get it what you're saying as far as if he's on the court, this and that, and he can be this, he can be that. Yeah, but you can't bet on a player that's been as inconsistent and you doubt how much he's really committed to basketball. You don't trade assets for that, in my personal opinion. So, no, I'm not in the case. I don't like, yeah, there are some reasons that you can make to come up with that. I'm just not for it. If he's waived, I'm all for the Bulls taking a shot because at that point, it is what it is. If he doesn't work out, he doesn't work out, right? But to trade and to give any assets for him, I just don't think it. And I think if you wait out, I don't think there are going to be a lot of teams that are itching to make a move and to give up anything major for Zion. Now, maybe if they have a big expiring contract that they don't plan on using, maybe they make a move for Zion then. But I think the signs are starting to point towards the Pelicans are probably going to waive him, and I think you wait that out. All right, let's move to the next one. This one's from Brian.
Hey, Brian here. Brine. Long-time listener, first-time caller, I guess. So, I'm a lifelong musician and a lifelong Bulls fan. So, I have an unpopular take, maybe, but it's fact. Basketball is the physical manifestation of music. Take that however you want. Anyway, I wondered if you were aware of Rick Rubin. Rick Rubin formed Def Jam Records. Did Beastie Boys. He's the guy behind Run DMC getting together with Aerosmith, yada yada. He's a weirdo in the music world. And he has a new podcast. It's old now. I guess it's a year old. But he's all like Zen, look him up. Rick Rubin. You can't miss him. He started a new podcast, and I thought it was interesting that his first interview was with Phil Jackson. But that made perfect sense to me. I don't know if you're aware of this, but I think you, specifically, the champion of the, you do a good job. I really appreciate it. But thinking basketball in weird terms, this, Rick Rubin has a podcast. Check out, just Google Rick Rubin, Phil Jackson. You'll find it. It's cool. It's interesting. Every Bulls fan would be interested in this. It's two Zen guys chatting, but one has no fucking idea about basketball at all. So there's a lot of explaining to do. It's quite interesting. Tell me what your thoughts are on that. Also, keep up the good work, man.
First of all, Brian, who the hell doesn't know Rick Rubin? What type of uncultured swine are you around to where people don't know Rick Rubin? The fact that you just spent so much of that voicemail explaining who Rick Rubin is, who the hell do you think I am? Right? Is this what we doing? That we think me, Hayes, who started off with a hip-hop podcast, doesn't know who Rick Rubin is? And listen, if anybody is listening to this and watching this video and you don't know who Rick Rubin is, please, for the love of God, go culture yourself. And as much as we're talking about Zen, Brian, I think that you may have been hitting a little bit too much za before you left this voicemail. All fun, right? Thank you for leaving the voicemail. I'd love for you to leave more and love to hear your basketball thoughts. But the fact that you spent so much of that voicemail explaining who Rick Rubin is, and then you didn't even say anything about the interview other than just go check it out. It was pretty good. Yes, it was good. It was a very good interview. And I think when you look at Phil Jackson and just kind of where he is in this point, Phil is just smoking a lot of weed, chilling, and probably having young 28-year-old women come in and out of his cabana is probably what's happening there. But it was a really solid interview overall. But yeah, man, you've been hitting that za a little hard, bro. You've been hitting it a little too much, my brother, before you left that voicemail. You didn't say nothing. I played it because it's funny, but you didn't say nothing, my boy. You spent 3 minutes not saying nothing. The za, man, smoking that stuff strong. Can I get some? All right, let's get into the next voicemail, man. This one's from Shay.
What's up, Hayes? This is Shay. I've been doing some serious thinking, and this is just my analogy. You may not agree with it. You may even call it stupid, but I believe that it's a must that the Chicago Bulls must make the playoffs for Josh Giddey's sake in order for him to get that $30 million contract from the Chicago Bulls and for him to play well. Look, and the reason why I said that is because of this. If you look at last year when he was with the Oklahoma City Thunder, one of the reasons why the Thunder were willing to give him up, not only because he didn't want to come off the bench, but because he did not perform well in that Dallas series that they were eliminated in. Now, the reason why I came up with this analogy is because we all know Giddey is a good to average, decent player in the regular season, but let's keep it real. We always say this. The real test comes for players when the playoffs come. I feel like if the Bulls make the play-in and the playoffs, I feel like, and if he performs well, let's not forget about that, performs well to good, it's a must if he wants to get his money from the Chicago Bulls, because the way I see it, with how inconsistent this team is, I feel like that AK is really, the jury is already going to be set on Josh Giddey if we don't necessarily make the playoffs or the play-in, because I believe AK, and Billy Donovan have already given up on him already, and they're not really too sold on him anymore. So yeah, I believe that this team must make the playoffs, and he must perform well for his sake in order for him to get that $30 million. That $30 million, because I don't believe that if we don't make the play-in or the playoffs, that's basically bad news for him. Now again, he must perform well, but I believe that the playoffs should be a must, especially for his sake and him wanting to get that around $30 million from the Chicago Bulls. That's just my opinion. Anyway, tell me what you think. Peace.
All right, Shay, I speak for everyone, and for people that are listening to this, Shay is my little brother, so I'm about to be harsh, but I'm not harsh like this to most callers. Shay, I speak for everyone under the sound of my voice in the planet. If you don't think, just please don't think. Every time you say you've been thinking, you come up with some shit that don't make no sense, bro. Every single time. Every time you say you've been thinking, the next thing out of your mouth, we'd be like, oh, were you? Because, first of all, to say that the Bulls have to go on a playoff run for Josh Giddey to earn his contract, and then in the same breath you say that you think that they're out on Josh, or they gave up on Josh Giddey. If they gave up on a player, there's nothing that somebody could do to turn it around. And one playoff series in which the Bulls are not going to win, a playoff series because we're not good enough, isn't going to change the overall evaluation of this front office. This front office, if they don't see Josh Giddey as a $30 million player, one listless playoff series is not going to change that if they don't see that. Shay, sometimes, bro, you need some za. Brian, we talked about he needs to lay off the strong za. You need some, bro. You need to mellow out. You need to chill some, bro. You need to go touch some dirt. I would say go to the nearest open baseball or football field and just run to your heart content. Just go out there and just run, pace, lap around it. Go chase a dog or two. Like, go play fetch. I don't know what. Shay, stop. Stop thinking, brother. Stop. But as far as Josh Giddey's contract extension, I mean, we'll see. I think that how he plays and how he performs over the season, as it should, is going to dictate a lot, as well as what the direction of the Bulls are. Because, again, I really do think that the Bulls are probably going to go best player available if they keep their draft pick, whether that's a guard, and if that is, that could lead them to wanting to move off of some and clear some of the glut of guards that they have. So we'll see what happens. They're all jokes aside. But Shay, stop thinking, bro. I love you. I truly do. But stop thinking. All right, let's get into the last voicemail for today. This one's from Reginald.
Hey, this is Reginald from Columbus, Georgia. I'm just looking at a lot of different podcasts talking about what are the many problems of the Bulls, and there are a lot of them. And part of it is coming from the front office, part of it is coming from the Bulls players, but another part also goes to Billy Donovan. And the part that I put on the front office is the construction of this team. I don't know how to say it better than they waited too long to move off some players, and they failed to evaluate what other players work for. For instance, Javon Carter. I understand some people thought he would be a great addition to this team. I wasn't so sure. Maybe a lot of the positives we see was, because of the system, because of coaching, because he was playing with, guys like Giannis and Bobby Portis and Brooke Lopez. But he got a deal that was clearly better than he deserved. You can blame that on the front office. When Lonzo went down, and the only real attempt they made to replace him was Patrick Beverly. And now you look at it, and with that being the case, it set this team up for failure. That's on the front office. Coaching, come on. Billy Donovan should have been gone. He doesn't develop players well. His style of coaching is dated. He has a problem with superstars as well. I'll call him a star. Zach LaVine, not because of his problems on the court or problems off the court or problems in the locker room. Zach LaVine has a problem with Billy Donovan because he doesn't know what to do. Because he doesn't make proper substitution, he doesn't make proper adjustments. He's just, when things don't go the way the way to plan, he's deer in headlights. He's stuck, and he'll ride that game plan to the end. And as for certain players, P. Will is a perfect example. Has size, has skill, has all the tools he needs to be a guy who should be giving you, at this point in time, 17 assists with blocking a couple of steals a game. But he can't do it because mentally, he's not mentally able to do it. He's more comfortable waiting for the ball to come to him, take a jump shot, and then go on about his business.
Reggie, I mean, here's the thing, bro. I think where this team is overall right now in everything, like Billy Donovan, things aren't all Billy Donovan's fault, but I do think some of it is. Things aren't all the players' fault, but some of it is. AK, a lot of it's his fault because he's the guy that built this team. He's the architect. He built this team. He put these players together and a lot. But I think overall, when you look at this team and where it is right now, it's disappointing. I think there's no way around the disappointment that we see in this team every single day. But I think at the same time, they failed at certain evaluations. I think that Javon Carter, he just wasn't good, right? And a lot of their picks were more picks for potential. So we'll see how that develops. I give it a little bit more leeway in trying to judge it now because, they were more potential picks, right? Modest and Pat were the first-round picks. Io was a second-round pick. Julian Phillips was a second-round pick. Dalen was also a first-round pick there at the end of the first round. So we'll see. But I think overall, you're going to get in the NBA, you can only use as much data as you have. And sometimes in doing that and trying to find a fit, you're going to make some mistakes. The problem with AK and Eversley to me is that their mistakes have started stacking up. And then their inability to recognize a mistake and then move off of it has limited them even more. And the combination of those things has really put us in a place now where we see where the franchise is, and it sucks. And so I think that's the overarching thing here, and that's the thing that I really want to see them fix, and hopefully they do. And all we can do is dig in and hope for the best is really what it comes down to. But that's my time for today, guys, man. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bull Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. It is Derrick Rose night, by the way, so I expect a lot of mailbags after today's game. 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, see red if you can, guys. Love you guys. Go Bulls. See red, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.